68 अक्षर ये ना जानो, 68 तीर्थ सार, 8 संपदा थी परमाणु, 68 दातार, समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार, ए छे 14 पुरवनो सार, समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार, ए छे 14 पुरवनो सार। नवपद एना नवनिध आपे, भव भवना दुख कापे, वीर वचन थी हृदय व्यापे, परमतम पद आपे, समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार, ए छे 14 पुरवनो सार, समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार, ए छे 14 पुरवनो सार। एना महिमानो नहीं पार, एनो अर्थ अनंत अपार, एना महिमानो नहीं पार, एनो अर्थ अनंत अपार, समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार, ए छे 14 पुरवनो सार, समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार, ए छे 14 पुरवनो सार।
પ્રણામ. જય જિનેન્દ્ર. Let's start with the prayers and then we'll carry on with today's topic. Namo Orientanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro, Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadmam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro, Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadmam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro, Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadmam Havai Mangalam. वीर सरसुरा सुरेंद्र महेतो वीरंबुदा संश्रिता वीरेणाभियत स्वकर्म निचयो वीराय नित्यं नमः। वीरातीर्थमिदं प्रभुतमतुलं वीरशघोरं तपो वीरे श्रीधृति कीर्तिकान्ति निचय श्रीवीरभद्रं दिश कमठे धरणेन्द्र च शोचितं कर्म कुर्वति प्रभुस्तुल्य मनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रीस्तुः आदिमं पृथ्वीनाथ मादिमं निष्परिग्रहं मादिमं तीर्थनाथं च ऋषभस्वामिनं स्तुमः। जगन्मोहमा निद्रापति समयपुमं मनीषव्रतनाथस्य देशनावचनं स्तुमः। कमठे धरणेन्द्र च शोचितं कर्म कुर्वति प्रभुस्तुल्य मनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रीस्तुः। अंगूठे अमृतवसे लब्धितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिय मनवांछित फलदातार। Ongoing on our topic on Nav Tatva, we are going to learn about Punya very briefly. There is a lot more detail in the commentaries on the Nav Tatva Prakarana, and there are a lot of other texts where the details of the karma itself, that is called Punya Karma, are given. That subject goes into a lot more detail than I think we can probably spend time for in each of these new subjects that we are going to be covering. Some of those subject matter we will limit our discussions, but please remember that we are discussing some fairly basic things. We are not going into a great depth of the details of Nav Tatva. But I'm hoping that this introduction, this brief understanding of this will spur you on to spend more time, and we could uh, maybe in the future spend more time on all the different tattvas in greater detail. We're going to start with Punya Tattva today. Before I share my slides, I just wanted to ask those of you who are logged in today, what do you understand by Punya? Anybody?
Is it the this wholesome karma? So it's for it's a general topic, or a general karma that everything that doesn't fall into the other categories falls into punya.
No. I mean, karma is the matter that binds to the soul. So it's karma udgal, which when it binds to the soul because of the many different reasons that we'll come to when we discuss ashra in a bit more detail. And when it binds to the soul in a way that then in the future is responsible for the experiences that the soul then undergoes in its journey in different lives from one life to another, etc. So, punya is what Shailna has mentioned as a virtue or merit. So, the same term is used for, say, punya karma is that power or that matter or that karma that will give you the good experiences and the good material trappings in this life and in the future life. The activity that generates that punya, meaning the activity that actually binds those karmas, are also called punya. So when we discuss this topic, punya and pap, very briefly we'll be looking at those two aspects. So what do you get as a result of the acquisition of punya that you have accumulated in the past lives? And what are those activities that have made it possible for the soul to accumulate those punya karmas, the effects of which you are experiencing? So, another way of looking at this is, if you consider yourself fortunate and happy, What is the reason for that? Apart from, so if I were to ask you, do you feel happy generally? And this question is not about, we are talking at this from the Vyavharik, from the materialistic point of view. Would you consider, most of us on this class, what are the aspects that you could describe in your lives as something that is giving you a good experience and making you, in inverted commas, happy? We won't go into the deeper definition of happiness, but generally what we more or less understand. What are the different experiences that you would class under that?
Having peace,
Having peace, okay. Having food on your table, having a healthy body generally, okay. Having a home to stay in, having a family, somebody to worry about you and look after you. Does that all count as you being uh, having the necessary ingredients that gives you the stability and the peace in your life? We may all have experiences which may suggest otherwise. We say that not necessarily all these other things give me peace and happiness, but they are there. And if we ask somebody who does not have any of those, so if we ask somebody who cannot feed himself or his family for several days in a row and does not have any income or adequate income to pay the bills and then still buy food and has to go to the food bank to go and get some food, would that person consider our situation as that of being fortunate? If a beggar was asked, and if a beggar was looking at our lives, would he consider us to be fortunate? Yeah, or not? So most of the material stability in our lives is as a result of accumulated punya karma in the past. We will come to the details of what that should actually mean and what ultimately the effect of experiencing this punya karma can have, and what determines the future outcome of these experiences is a different question. But the fact that we have food on our table, we have a house, we've got fairly decent health, we've got fairly stable relationships, etc., etc., and we've got a source of income which we then makes us not worry about where the money is coming from to pay the bills tomorrow or day after. And we got fairly well satisfied, we feel fairly well satisfied with our lot in life, but there may be ups and downs, there may be issues with our work, with our relationships, with our finances, etc. But by and large, our experiences are positive in that respect. Okay? Everybody agrees that those are things that we have that are not necessarily universal. And there has to be a reason why some of us experience this or have all this and others do not. Is that logical? Yeah. Okay. So silence means consent. I see you all agree that those are things that we have got. If we were looking at ourselves as the soul, are all these material successes or trappings or material wealth that we have or stability that we have, will all of that be beneficial to our soul in the future? Yes, no, maybe.
No,
No, why not?
because unless this is what we've earned from our past karmas. If we don't do anything to improve or to, you know, do some more punya, or we're not going to take it to the next life. So this is all going to stay here. We go forward.
Okay. So as a result of, say, for example, you having a lot of spare money, a healthy body, and the willingness to help others and do good, you do a lot of work socially and a lot of your kind, and you accumulate more karmas of good nature. That means punya karma. Does that ultimately help the soul?
Yes, that will sort of obviously help you in the next life. But until you sort of make sure your self-realization, you're making sure your soul is sort of looked at, and it's just going to help you for in the future to maybe be happy. But ultimately we need to make sure the soul is reaching moksha, so we need to make sure that sort of.
Okay, very good, Shelina. So if we are experiencing this good fortune and we use that good fortune to generate more punya, okay,
Yeah, then it will.
okay, so you would utilize that good fortune to generate more punya for a future life. But if your desire is for enjoyment of what that punya brings, does that create a problem?
Yes, because you're going to use up all your punya karmas.
Yeah,
And
but
you
you
don't.
are also doing good and you are generating more punya.
Yeah, if you do that, if you generate more punya, then obviously that's going to help you in the future.
Okay.
And if you don't do anything else but just enjoy it, that's not going to do anything.
It's
Okay. Sorry.
sorry. It
Ah.
will give you comfort in the
Mhm.
future life or whatever, but it, eventually it's still an attachment, and it's not. You still need to release that before your soul, which is the peak. So basically, you still need to give up that attachment in the end anyway. It will give you comfort in achieving that, in the future life, but the attachment part will hold you back.
Okay. Let's look at an example, and you probably all heard of these examples. You have heard of Baladev and Vasudev, Chakravarti, Baladev, Vasudev. Out of the 63 great lives that are described in the Trisasti Shalaka Purush Charitra, there are Baladevs and Vasudevs who are born as brothers. The Vasudev is the more powerful one, who has the necessary punya that gives him the emperorship of the three out of the 6 continents of where they are born, of that particular kshetra. And in our Chuvisi, the two that we know most well is Lakshman Vasudev, Krishna Vasudev, and one other who we have discussed when we were talking about Bhagavan Mahavir's life was Tripusht Vasudev. The status of a Vasudev, the enormous wealth that comes with it, the huge power that comes with being born as a Vasudev, not just physical power, but all the other necessary weaponry and the overall recognition in the world as a Vasudev, and everything that brings with it, the enormous fortune in terms of not just financial, but in terms of parivar, meaning the number of wives they have, the number of children, and how everything runs for them throughout that life, is as a result of having acquired a huge amount of punya. But why is that punya not good? What happened? Do you remember what happened to Lakshman, Krishna after their death?
They went into hell.
They went into Narak. So, how was that punya acquired? Do you remember how, we won't go, we haven't discussed the details, but if we remember some of the aspects that we talked about with Tripusht Vasudev, Bhagavan Mahavir's life, in his previous life, he acquired this punya by virtue of trading the power of his tap as a monk, and says, if my tap has got the strength and the power, then in my next life I want to be strong and I want to be powerful. So the punya that he had acquired as a result of that tap that he had done was converted into the punya that would give him the birth of a Vasudev with all the trappings of it, but because it was acquired as a result of trade, and the trade basically imprinted the idea that the wealth, the power, the strength, all of those were more important than the emancipation of the soul. So the punya was acquired through tap, through all the following good conduct of a monk, but it was all traded for something absolutely material, and as a result of that, the pap that was accumulated, collected during that life as a Vasudev, ultimately resulted in all of them going to Narak. And that happens to all Vasudevs. So in terms of us understanding where the importance of punya or good punya is, let's start with some of that basic understanding now. I won't go into the details of these slides from the last week. The binding of good karmas is punya. When punya comes to fruition, one has good material experiences. This is some very relevant text here in the description of punya in Nav Tatva Prakarana. Punya is defined as Subh Karmano Bandh. શુભ કર્મો 42 એટલે 42 છે તે પુણ્ય તત્વ કહેવાય છે. શુભ કર્મો રૂપે તેનો ઉદય થવાથી શુભ અનુભવો દ્વારા પુણ્ય ભોગવાય છે. પુણ્યના કારણો શુભ આશ્રવ કહેવાય છે અને તે પણ પુણ્ય બંધનું કારણ હોવાથી પુણ્ય કહેવાય છે. અને 9 પ્રકારે એ પુણ્ય બંધાય છે. So 9 different ways in which punya is accumulated. And it's important to remember the kind of punya that we are talking about. પુણ્ય તત્વ મુખ્યત્વે ગૃહસ્થને જ ઉપાદેય આદરવા યોગ્ય છે. Meaning, punya is mainly what a gruhast means a Jain householder, that is considered to be the right conduct for a gruhast. What this statement also means at that the conduct of a monk and a nun is not done for the purpose of accumulating punya. Punya is acquired and accumulated naturally by all the activities that a monk and a nun do, but their primary aim is not to acquire more punya. Their primary aim is to discard and to get rid of the karmas that have been accumulated in the past and progressively become purer as the soul, and their primary purpose is that of purifying the soul. The gruhast or the householder, Shravak, should also have that purpose, but because of his or her limitation in the strength of their vairagya and an inability to become monks and nuns, they stay on in the household and carry on with the tasks with the primary aim of being good, getting towards spiritual progress, but in the process ensuring that they are functioning to support all those others who are following the path of moksha. આ પુણ્ય તત્વ મુખ્યત્વે ગૃહસ્થને જ ઉપાદેય આદર યોગ છે. મોક્ષની આકાંક્ષાથી પૂર્વકત 9 પ્રકારે દાનાદિથી મોક્ષને અનુકૂળ કાર્યો કરવા. મોક્ષને અનુકૂળ કાર્યો કરવા. So there's 9 different ways in which punya is accumulated. And there are some very important words here that we will discuss. I'll just read out the 9 types that are described here. પાત્રને અન્ન આપવાથી. અન્ન આપવું એટલે ખાવાનું દેવું. પાત્ર, that is the qualifying word. પાત્રને પાણી આપવાથી. પાત્રને સ્થાન આપવાથી. પાત્રને શયન આપવાથી એટલે to feed, food and water to patra એટલે the one who deserves it most. પાત્રને સ્થાન આપવાથી to give space so that they can stay there. પાત્રને શયન આપવાથી to give space for them to be able to rest. પાત્રને વસ્ત્ર આપવાથી give them clothes so they can protect themselves, their bodies from the elements. So those are the 5 different ways in which great punya, which is considered to be beneficial to the soul, is acquired. And the qualifying word with all of them is patrane. Then 6, 7, 8, it says manna subh sankalp rup vyaparthi. 7 vachanna subh sankalp subh vyaparthi, kayana subh vyaparthi. So when you are doing activities, meaning physical activity using your body, kaya yoga, then if you're doing good with your body, that is kayana subh vyaparthi, punya karma bandhai છે. vachanna subh vyaparthi, when you are saying good things that give peace and comfort to others. And manna subh sankalp rup vyaparthi, when your thoughts are in a direction that is for in consideration of others and ways in which you can help them. Now, there is a definition of patra, meaning પાત્રતા કેને કહેવાય. તીર્થંકર ભગવંતથી માંડીને મુનિ મહારાજ સુધીના મહાત્મા પુરુષો સુપાત્ર ધર્મી ગૃહસ્થો પાત્ર છે. So, Bhagwan and Tirthankar, so that means Tirthankar Paramatma, મહાત્મા પુરુષો એટલે મુનિ સાધુ સાધ્વી એ બધાને સુપાત્ર એટલે ધર્મી ગૃહસ્થો પાત્ર કહેવાય. સોરી, મહાત્મા પુરુષો સુપાત્ર કહેવાય. ધર્મી ગૃહસ્થો પાત્ર કહેવાય. ધર્મી ગૃહસ્થો એટલે other શ્રાવક શ્રાવિકા who are conducting a good life are called patra. અનુકંપા કરવા યોગ્ય અપંગ આદિ જીવો પણ અનુકંપ્ય પાત્ર છે. So those who have some difficulty in their lives and those who require help, a anukampa karwa layak, meaning those who are in any kind of difficulty, you go out of your way to help them, or you do what you can. A anukampya પણ પાત્ર છે. શેષ સર્વ અપાત્ર ગણવા, meaning પાત્રને અન્ન આપવાથી, પાત્રને પાણી આપવાથી, પાત્રને સ્થાન આપવાથી, પાત્રને શયન આપવાથી, પાત્રને વસ્ત્ર આપવાથી. So giving all these to Tirthankar Paramatma, Guru Bhagwan, Sadhu Sadhuji Bhagwan is Supatra. Dharmi Gruhasto, એટલે કે householders who are leading a good life in spiritual terms are called Dharmi Gruhasto, એને પાત્ર કહેવાય. Also, those in need, those who are poor, those who are destitute, those who have difficulties helping those, are Anukampya Patra kehvai. All the rest are called Apatra, meaning if we are helping a lot of the other people, એ અપાત્રને દાન કરવાથી we may acquire punya, but that punya is not necessarily ultimately beneficial to the soul. સ્વપર હિતાર્થે જીનેન્દ્ર શાસનની પ્રભાવના કરવી, શક્તિ હોય તો શાસનદ્રોહીને પણ યોગ્ય શિક્ષાથી નિવારવો, વિવેકપૂર્વક અનેક દેવ મંદિર બંધાવા, જીનેન્દ્ર પ્રતિમાઓ ભરાવી, જીનેન્દ્ર પ્રભુના ચૈત્યનો નિર્વાહ માટે વિવેકપૂર્વક દેવદ્રવ્યની વૃદ્ધિ કરી, અનેક પૌષધશાળાઓ કરાવી. So all the good activities that will support those who are following a very intense spiritual life are all considered to be the kind of punya tattva that will ultimately benefit the soul in future lives, because it will give the soul in that particular life the necessary material circumstances that will ensure that that soul has got the surroundings, the material stability, the material facilities, and a desire to actually progress spiritually. Some of the things that we have discussed in the past and said that it is very fortunate that we have been born as a human being. That is considered to be an extremely rare event as well in universal terms. So that is as a result of accumulation of a lot of punya. There is a line by Srimad Rajchandra, Bahu punya kera punjathi bhavamanavi no madiyo. And to lose that would be a great loss. But in many ways, that is a great achievement. But for us all who are here, the fact that in addition to that, we have had the necessary exposure to the spiritual teachings that tells us about Tirthankar Paramatmas, the right Bhagwans, Ari and Siddh. We know about Sadhu Bhagwans, Acharya Upadhyay Sadhu. We know about what is right and wrong. We have had some exposure to all that. But that is not where our punya ends. The fact that we have then got an interest in listening to find out more about it, and then a desire to make changes in our lives that we are learning, all that is suggestive of a very great level of punya accumulation, and that by definition means that we have done some of these things that are being described here in a past life or many past lives. So that is what punya helps us acquire and the ways in which we acquire punya. Does anybody know there are 4 different ways in which punya and pap are described? I'm sure many of you know. Sure, Bharat Bhai knows, obviously, and I'm sure Hasmukh Bhai would know. I'm going to stop sharing this slide, but this is the last slide. This is types of punya and pap. How are punya and pap described in giving it a bit more definition? The terms that are used as punyānubandhi punya, papānubandhi punya, punyānubandhi pap, and papānubandhi pap. Have you heard of these terms before? Punyānubandhi punya. Okay. What do you understand by it?
પુણ્યાનુબંધી પુણ્ય એટલે તમે લાઈક તમને પુણ્યના સમજો કે લોટરી લાગી છે એટલે એ આપણા પુણ્યના કારણે લાગી છે પણ એ જ વસ્તુ તમે હોલિડેમાં વાપરવાને બદલે કોઈ ધર્મ કાર્યમાં વાપરો તો એનું પાછું પુણ્યાનુબંધી પુણ્ય બંધાશે આપણું એ
એમાં પણ કોર પ્રિન્સિપલ શું છે? What is the તમે સારી જગ્યાએ વાપરો, તમને જે ફેસિલિટી મળી છે એ, પણ તમે સારી જગ્યાએ વાપરો with a desire to acquire more punya, would that be considered good?
ના એટલે આપણે એવું નથી કે હું હજી સારી જગ્યાએ વાપરીશ તો મને સારું વધારે પુણ્ય મળશે પણ ના આ મને મળ્યું છે તો એનો હું સદુપયોગ કરું એમ
બરાબર.
નહીં તો કદાચ મારા મનમાં જો એવો મને વિચાર આવત તો હું હોલિડેમાં વહી ગઈ હોત એમ
એટલે એ પણ આપણે કરીએ છીએ પણ સાથે આપણે એ પણ સમજીએ કે ભાઈ આના કરતા આ પૈસા વાપરવાના સારા રસ્તા છે. That understanding is where the principle lies. અને એ પ્રિન્સિપલ જો આપણે ફોલો કરતા હોઈએ તો પુણ્યના કારણે જે વસ્તુ મળી છે, things that we have got as a result of the punya, if we ultimately spiritual progress માટે ultimately one needs to consider both material unhappiness and material happiness as one and the same. So people who are getting to that stage of significant spiritual progress would not feel unhappy when circumstances are not good, when they've got major problems of any kind, and would not feel particularly happy or elated when everything is going right and they've got great wealth and everybody is giving them great respect and they've got no problems in their lives, but they would still remain fairly equanimous in either situation. So another way of looking at it is when we say our prarthana every week, we say Kamathe Dharanendra cha so chitam karma kurvati prabhu sthulya manovrutti parshvanatha sriyestuvaha. So Kamat, with the warped thinking that he has, is trying to punish Bhagavan Parshvanath, who is standing in meditation, by raining down all kinds of dust and material to almost drown him, and raining down so much. And he is doing that with great anger and hatred towards Bhagavan Parshvanath. And Kamat, that is Kamat, and Dharanendra, he comes down to protect Bhagavan Parshvanath from this onslaught from Kamat, the Dev. Bhagavan Parshvanath is neither happy that Dharanendra has come to help him, and is not unhappy that Kamat has come to create this situation for him where he is in great discomfort. To him, both of them are the same. By definition, therefore, it means that neither the discomfort nor the comfort have any meaning to him. They are both considered to be the same. So he does not like the comfort and does not dislike the discomfort, meaning that he is with Rag. Rag and Dvesh have gone. So ultimately, when we are talking about all the material wealth and trappings that one gets as a result of good punya, when one gets engrossed in that punya and considers that to be worth pursuing, enjoying it, feeling proud about it, showing off, and completely ignoring the spiritual benefits of using that somewhere else, or being so attached to it that one does not like to spend any of that money, neither in pursuing pleasure and nor in actually helping others, then all that will ultimately accumulate bad pap karmas. So another example of papanubandhi punya is that of Maman Seth. Many of you have probably heard this story. Maman Seth in his previous life was a Shravak who had gone to a religious event somewhere, and following that event, when it ended, the person who had organized that very generously gave all the attendees, the participants, what is called prabhavna. So we all know what prabhavna is, that when you go to a religious event, the organizers will distribute something, and we all get prabhavna during Paryushan when we go and do pratikraman. So different people distribute those. Now, the soul who in future life, the next life, is going to become Maman Seth, he takes this prabhavna and carries it with him on his way home. On the way, he meets a Muni Bhagwant and very generously feels that the Muni Bhagwant, he wants to give the Muni Bhagwant something that would eat, and this prabhavna is right and suitable for him. So he gives it to him. But he thinks that I'll share what I've got. So he gives some of it back to the Muni Bhagwant and carries some of it. It was something called sukri. It's a sweet. And he carries some of it with him back home to enjoy it later on. When he gets home and he has that sweet that he has brought with him from the Prabhavana that has been given to him, he is so struck by the great taste of that sukhli, and he is so engrossed in that taste that he begins to regret the fact that he had actually given half of it to Muni Bhagwant. So, in the process of actually giving that sukhli to the Muni Bhagwant, he had at that moment accumulated a huge amount of punya karma that would in a future life give him enormous wealth. But later on, in the process of regretting that good deed, that karma gets modified in such a way that even though he has a huge amount of wealth, as Maman said, he acquires that wealth by extreme hard work, and he accumulates that wealth without spending much on himself. So he lives in a very poor surroundings. He lives in, he works extremely hard, and he uses the wealth that he acquires by the work that he is doing to buy diamonds and precious jewels and gold, etc. And the purpose of that is he loves diamonds, he is a miser, and he is building two gold-studded, jewel-studded barad, bulls, small ones, maybe big ones, and he accumulates all that just because he is so greedy and he enjoys building this up. So he's basically a collector of jewels, and he spends his whole life there in that way. And in the end, he, after that particular life, he goes to Narak because he spent his life accumulating money, not spending, but burdened by a huge amount of greediness. So his lobh kashai is to such an extent that he loses all sense of any kind of spiritual progress. So that was Maman said. And the story of Salibhadra is given often in contrast. Salibhadra in his previous life as the son of a poor woman, a young son who wanted to eat some kheer. He is very keen on eating kheer that his friends are eating because it's a particular festival day, and his this young boy's friends are saying that they are their mothers are cooking kheer for them that day, and he comes back to his mom and says, "Can I also have kheer?" And mom says, "We do not have the ingredients," because his mom was quite poor. But then she feels sorry for the boy and goes out to the neighbors and begs for some rice and some milk and some sugar and prepares kheer for the boy. And it's hot and piping, and she puts it in a large uh, plate, a thal, and says, "Sit here, let it cool, and then you can eat it after it has cooled down." So while the boy is sitting there watching the kheer that he desperately wants to eat, waiting for it to cool, a Muni Bhagwant comes there, and this young boy, Salibhadra, is so pleased to see a Muni Bhagwant standing there, and with the patra in front and says Dharmalabh, the Muni Bhagwant says Dharmalabh, and this young boy takes up the container of kheer and pours it all into the patra of the Muni Bhagwant. And he's so joyful in doing this, and he's so happy that he's done that. He forgets that he's hungry. He forgets that this is something that he had really pushed his mom to make for him. And he appreciates the value of the Muni Bhagwant to an extent that he completely ignores his own desires. And the Muni Bhagwant normally would not take everything that was there. He would take some and ask the boy to stop. But looking at the boy, he saw that this person is in a very high state spiritually. So let him continue, and he takes whatever the boy is giving him. Later on, the mom sees that the plate is empty. She thinks that he has been so hungry that he's eaten it all, and tells him that I've got some rice and milk and sugar left, and I'll make some more kheer for you. I know you're hungry, so let me make some more. So the boy has his fill, but he does not regret like that chief of Mammon said regretted. And in his next life, he becomes Salibhadra. And Salibhadra has enormous wealth. He's the richest man in the city of Rajguri at the time of Shrenik Raja, at the time of Bhagwan Mahavir. And he is completely detached from that wealth. And when the time comes and when he realizes what life is, he gives it all up in a second. So his attachment, in contrast to the attachment of Mammon Seth, is very different. So these are two examples of Punyanu Punya, that is of Salibhadra. Papanubandhi Punya is that of Mammon Seth. Punyanubandhi Pap, that you are experiencing something unfortunate, difficulties, but throughout that experience, your tolerance of everything that is going on around you, your state of forgiveness of anybody who may be the nimit for that thing, and your equanimity in during that suffering suggests that you are not going to be accumulating more bad karmas while you are experiencing the fruits of those bad karmas. So, for example, if we are walking on a street, slip on a banana skin, break our back or break a leg, and are stuck in a plaster for 12 weeks and are unable to walk, and we accept that and say, okay, this was the result of my previous bad karma, my pap, I'll suffer it in silence. I will not spoil my mind. I will not start blaming and becoming very upset and angry. And I'll just take this on the chin and remain calm. Then that suffering that you are experiencing without giving into bad thoughts and deeds and all kinds of activities that would further give you more pap karma, then but you carry on doing your good work, and that is called punyanubandhi pap. And papanubandhi pap, when you suffer something like this, and then you start on a journey of vengeance of 6 months, 12 months of fighting with everybody and seeking compensation and all those kinds of things because you are upset and angry, that may give you other bad karmas that then in the future will give you more bad things to experience. So that is papanubandhi pap. So very briefly, we started off with the topic of punya, learned a bit more about that. Given you two examples of punyanubandhi punya and papanubandhi punya, Salibhadra and Mammon Seth. And we will end the topic here today. We'll go into a bit more detail of punya and pap and then come on to ashra, which is the bigger topic, and learn a bit more about that. And we will go back onto the spiritual aspects of learning about punya and papa. Okay, I'll end here now. If there are any further questions, then please feel free to switch on your videos. Before I end, there is an announcement. Next week, we do not have a class on Tuesday because there is a live in-person session at Potus Bar. Minal Ben Shah is talking about practical spirituality. It is an in-person session, so please, all of you, please try and attend if you can. It is at the same time, 8 to 9:30. Sandeep is trying to do a live video cast of that session, but it is proving to be difficult. So I would urge you all to please, if you can make it, to try and get to Potus Bar for 8 o'clock tomorrow, on Tuesday next week. So the date is the 6th of August. And Minal Ben is a very advanced spiritual teacher. I think she lives in South London, but I know that she'll be very inspiring, and she's talking about practical spirituality. Darshana and do you have anything to add, Mira, to that announcement?
I
Mira?
don't have anything to add.
No. Okay. So it's at 8 o'clock next Tuesday, 6th of August at Potus Bar, correct? I'm sure you all got the messages on your WhatsApp. Please try and attend. Any questions? I think the important thing to remember is that punya and pap are both ashrav, meaning attraction of karmas, and ultimately the binding of those karmas is what the soul does as a means of ensuring future progress. But when the binding of punya karma becomes a sole purpose with a view to enjoying the material happiness, and the focus is on material happiness and satisfaction and all that, then ultimately the soul's progress does not happen. So from that aspect, punya is something that is ultimately not necessary for the soul, and on the journey to moksha, even punya karma is discarded along with pap, because ultimately what we are aiming for is complete nirjara of all karmas. I think that is something that's important to remember.
One thing, the last two examples you gave were Charlie Brother and
Maman said.
Mama said. Unyanu Bande Pop isn't it like at the end you get pop? isn't it? Other way around.
So Maman Seth was Pap Anubandhi Punya. So he acquired the Punya, but ultimately, with all the money that he earned as a result of that Punya,
Yes.
one, it was solid. He worked extremely hard, not like Salibhadra, who inherited his wealth very easily. He didn't have to work a day in his life. And his father, who had become a Dev, was so loving that every day Salibhadra and his 32 wives were sent clothes from heaven in also on his palace uh, every day at night. 33
Yeah.
fantastic crates would drop down, and then his mother and his munim were running the fantastic business that they had, and he did not have to worry a day, but he was the owner of all of that. So
Yes.
his was Punyanubandhi Punya, whereas Maman Seth had enormous wealth that was very great, but all he did was accumulate it, bought diamonds, jewels, and was building these two barads that he loved. And these were not sort of barads, meaning he was making two sculptures, and that was all his interest in life.
And that's Punya Anubandhi Pap.
No, Papanubandhi Punya. So his Punya gave him the wealth, but ultimately that gave him, he accumulated a lot more pap after that took him down to Narak. Pap
Okay.
Anubandhi Punya. So પુણ્યના ભોગવટાથી એણે પાપ ઉપાર્જન કર્યું. Whereas Salibhadra was એણે પુણ્ય બાંધ્યું હતું, એના કારણે એને બધું મળ્યું, પણ એને ભોગવતા એ વધારે પુણ્ય બાંધતો રહ્યો, પણ એ જે એને મળ્યું હતું એની સાથે એને કોઈ લગાવ નહોતો. એની સાથે એને રાખવા માટે કે એને એનું કોઈ અટેચમેન્ટ નહોતું. અને જ્યારે એને મન થયું ત્યારે છોડીને બધું મૂકીને ચાલ્યો ગયો as a monk.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I understand what the meanings are, but it's just the sentence, Punya Anubandhi Pap. I thought he ends up with a pap when he's doing some punya. That's what I understood.
No. The first term, પુણ્ય અનુબંધી, meaning પુણ્યનો અનુબંધ થાય પુણ્યથી. So પુણ્ય કરવાથી પુણ્યનો જે પુણ્ય ઉદયમાં આવ્યું એને ભોગવવાથી ફરી પાછું પુણ્ય બંધાણું, એટલે પુણ્યાનુબંધી પુણ્ય.
Yeah.
પછી પાપાનુબંધી પુણ્ય મમણ શેઠ, કે જે પુણ્યના ઉદય આવ્યા પછી પાપનો અનુબંધ થયો.
Right. Okay.
That is the way it is termed. That's how I understand it. Bharatbhai, am I correct?
Pranam, yes, that is correct. An easy way to understand and remember is when you say Punya Nabandi Punya, or let's put it the other way, Punya Nabandi Pap. Pap, when you say Pap, Uday means he's because of his past karmas, he's experiencing Pap, bad deeds at the time. However, even with that one, he's still accruing good karmas.
So
The first one is what he is experiencing at the time, and the anubandh is what he binds at the time. That's an easy way to remember.
yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Jai Jinendra.
Thank you very much, Bharatbhai. That makes it clear.
Okay. Thanks.
Pranam. Like Sandeep, I'm having difficulty understanding this too. આપણે કહીએ છીએ કે પુણ્યને બંધો પાપ હતું, અને પાપની બંધે પુણ્ય હતું. In the case of Brahman said.
The term is anubandh. It is not anubandh meaning further accumulation. Anubandh meaning a sequence. So you create.
But you are binding at that time because of your uday. That means you are experiencing good uday or bad uday. However, whatever you are binding at the time is what is going to be. If you are binding good karmas at that time, then it is punyane anubandh.
Anubandh, yeah.
And the reverse is true for pap.
Okay, and the other thing I'm struggling with is આપણે બધું બાંધો કરીએ છીએ અને કે આપણે પુણ્ય બાંધીએ છીએ. What I feel is કે આપણે બાંધો કરીએ છીએ, it's not a religious thing. It's a social duty rather than a religious act. હવે આપણે કોઈ ગરીબને આપીએ કાંઈ, that's my social duty rather than a religious act.
Yeah, but it still accumulates karma. So every activity, as we have mentioned before, that karma bandhana karano, yog, man vachan kayana yog, everything that we do with our mind, thoughts, our speech, and our actions attracts karmas, and we are constantly accumulating karmas. So all our activities, whether they are done with an intention of fulfilling a religious duty or fulfilling a social duty, every activity is generating karma. So whether we believe in karma or not, so people who have never heard of karma are still constantly, or all of us are always accumulating karmas.
No, because what we believe is every action has a reaction.
Yeah.
So there's no way out of it.
Yeah.
But if we say every action has a reaction, then how do you get out of the cycle?
Exactly. So then that brings us back to something that I think we have discussed in the past, but we will be coming back to this again and again, because that is the core of our spiritual understanding and knowledge. So you're coming back to the Adhyatmic question. Ultimately, the soul's progress starts or begins when the soul begins to understand that being is more important than doing. So when you stay within yourself and gradually realize your true self and do not put the importance on doing, and you withdraw. So that is why meditation is important. That is why all the other religious activities that are designed for that is ultimately to take you to a place where you are discarding all the accumulated karmas that you have in the past by calming down. So the whole point of calming your mind, of the whole point of sadhana is to get to that state where you are progressively getting rid of karmas, ultimately to purify your soul. And once you reach a state where your mithyatva has gone, and then you gradually or rapidly climb up on the spiritual ladder, then all the other accumulated karmas will very rapidly fall off. So that is the path. So ultimately, the purpose of all this is to get back to yourself.
Okay, so what we're saying is every action has a reaction. Now say you're gifted with a lot of wealth.
Hmm.
You don't enjoy it for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like saying, it's not mine,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't actually physically do anything with it.
Yeah.
Is that better than doing something with, doing good deeds, or what we call good deeds, with that money?
Yeah. Ultimately, if your attachment to that wealth is zero, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
then
It's almost an impossible situation, but
Yeah.
if that was the case, for instance.
Yeah. If that was the case, then that wealth has no meaning for you. And that detachment from that parigraha
Mhm.
is a very high spiritual calling. So a lot of the monks who have given all of that up. So for example, Bharat Chakravarti gave it all up, even though he was in right in the middle of the emperorship of the whole world. Santinath Bhagwan, Kuntunath Bhagwan, Arnath Bhagwan as Chakravartis gave it all up because none of that had any meaning to them. So ultimately, parigraha no tyag, and the parigraha at least is the idea that anything that is not of me is not mine. I do not have any attachment to it. I do not have any sense of possession of any of that. Then that is a much higher spiritual calling. Then I've got the money. Let me go and help somebody. You may do whatever you want to with that money for a while, but ultimately, if you are in the process of detaching yourself from any sense of possession of that wealth, then that is a much higher calling. So you're right. That wealth, if that has no meaning to you, then that is a much better state to be in.
Thank you.
And ultimately, people who get to that stage, we've seen examples, have given it all up and say, look, I want to pursue a higher goal. None of this matters. And have,
And even in the modern times now,
Mhm.
a lot of people are still doing it. And
Yes, they are. And they are doing it successfully. They are doing it in a way that is often completely free of any kind of pride in that. And there's a lot to learn from that. So that's obviously a much higher calling. Ultimately, giving away your wealth is more about you detaching, in spiritual terms, detaching from this sense of owning that wealth, then the pride in that I'm doing something good with this wealth and I'm giving it to somebody. So when you say, so there is somebody at Ekta Center who volunteers every day, who often says, when we praise him for the work that he does, he says, I'm giving back what I've been given. I'm not doing anything. I'm just doing God's will. It's all physical help that he's doing and being there, being kind to people. But when you get to that stage of not actually having any pride in what you're doing, then that is obviously a much better state than somebody who is giving a lot, but also has a sense that, look, I'm really doing something with this and feel proud about it. So there are many different layers of ultimately how karmas get accumulated, what is the nature of those karmas, and what their effects will be in the future, is a very complex thing which reflects everything that is going on at the moment of the accumulation of that karma, but also what goes on subsequently. So when we go into a bit more depth, we learn about how the karmas, once they have been formed, undergo changes based on what we have been thinking about and doing subsequent to that initial accumulation or bandh of that karma. Hope that helps and doesn't complicate things more, Vasubhai.
No, it didn't complicate. No, it didn't complicate things. It's just with your teaching, it made me reflect an experience I had many years ago. I met this professor from Cambridge University who one fine morning just walked out of his house and ended up on the streets. And we got talking, and I never understood. But now that you're explaining these things, he's making me reflect on what he felt. What he felt was that he was always conditioned, that all human beings are conditioned to do things. We follow our path. But he has chosen, he was not a religious person, but he was a thinker, I guess.
Yeah.
And he says that I've now made a decision that I want to be a free person. I don't want to be bound by rules and regulations.
Yeah. And in many ways, a lot of people like that actually progress spiritually probably much faster, because some of the things that holds us back spiritually are those kinds of attachment, and the biggest factor in sort of our progress is more, and the prime sort of mover of more is aham. So, and in recent listening to some yakyans by Param Pujya Panyas Lapti Vallabh Vijayji, he very clearly says that there is rag and dvesh. Rag is liking something, dvesh is hating somebody. And he says, then there is more. And he goes on to explain that more is about you identifying with your vyaktitva, meaning that you have created a persona and you identify yourself with that. So in a sense, you have lost your originality, your original existence as the soul, and adopted an identity in this life, which we all have, but we have forgotten who we are and where we came from, and we are completely, totally identifying ourselves with this particular persona. I am Ajit, I am a doctor, I am a father, I am a husband, I am a son of this. All that attachments and all those relationships are what completely occupies and identifies me throughout my day. And the path to spiritual progress is to discard all those attachments and say, look, I am who I am. It is about being what one is and nothing else. So we're talking about a much more advanced state of being, but ultimately that is the path that our Guru Bhagwans repeatedly try and push us towards. Okay. So that person that you're talking about, there are examples of others. If you read some different literature, people have sort of come to that level or that kind of spiritual awareness from many different angles. Okay. Any other comments, Hasmukh or anybody else?
Yeah, this is Hasmukh. We've overrun, but very quickly something. Chandipuram virus. We heard about it.
Sorry?
Chandipuram virus. This is in India.
Yeah, rings a bell, but
You know, it's a thing. I just read about this recently. It's a recent thing, and it has claimed quite a lot of lives and young people as well. I read of a person, a 16-year-old. He got, well, his life was claimed by this virus. He was somebody that has done Navanu Siddhi Tapan Ubdan Mar as well. He had done Jiv Vichar Karma Granth Nav Tatva Vairagya na Shatak.
Vairagya Shatak, yeah.
And there you go. He was basically unconscious on a ventilator. And because what they did was, because it was his wish, okay, he was dying. But I mean, they actually gave him Ogo, and he was still conscious with it. And he changed his name. But what I can't understand is that somebody who had progress, I know this is, I mean, okay, I think we've already been there before. Even Bhagwan said that nobody can extend their life even by a second. So his life was only 16 years. But the teaching here is like, he had progressed so far at this age, and he got caught up with this. Okay, I mean, as I said, that's what it was meant to be. But how do we like try and make sense of that?
I think that was his lifespan was that. It is also possible that it may have been longer, but he got caught. I mean, all of us have lifespans which can be used up within a short while. So I may be destined from the Ayusha Karma that I've acquired to live, say, 80, 90 years, but I meet with an accident and the remaining 5 years or 10 years of my Ayusha Karma is spent in 5 seconds or 10 minutes, whatever. So that Karma can happen. So that may be something similar here. But in terms of the destiny that was meant to happen and that did happen, but whatever spiritual progress is made in this short life, we will definitely take him far, and I'm sure that people probably he wanted to do that as the last rite to become a monk, and so that's I think in many ways a great ending for him if that's what he wanted, and he was fully aware of what was going on.
I mean, yeah, that was it wish, and it was a great ending, but it's said like, it's just, one just thinks that, well, related to or I was kind of trying to relate myself, that we try never imagine such situations could be around the corner, sort of thing.
Yeah, you're right. So nobody knows what's around the corner, and that is why we are taught that don't wait, and when if your goal should be spiritual progress, and for that to happen, you need to move fast because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay. Thank you all for participating and listening. I hope we are moving forwards spiritually, and pray to for spiritual progress for all of us. Jinagna Virud, kain pada bolyo ho, te sabi manochan kaya kari, tasmichhami dugdam. If I've said anything against the teachings of our Paramatma and Guru Bhagwans, I ask for forgiveness. Sarva Mangal Mangalyam, Sarva Kalyana Karanam, Pradhanam, Sarva Dharmanam, Jainam Jayati Sahasram. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time. And next week, please try and make those of you who can to Notice Bar next Tuesday. Okay. Thank you,
Yes,
Darshana
fine.
and Meera. Thank you both. Thank you,
Bye.
Bharat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.